Hello Internet, and welcome back to my film reviews for the Hunger Games movies. Last time we covered Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and today we're here to talk about the second film in the Hunger Games series, Catching Fire. Released on November 22nd, 2013, Catching Fire takes place immediately after the end of the 74th Hunger Games, in which Katniss Everdeen and Peeta Mellark are crowned the victors of the Hunger Games. At this point, an uprising begins all across the districts of Panem, all because Katniss and Peeta threaten to double suicide with nightlock berries. And while the two of them are on their victory tour across the districts, President Coriolanus Snow warns Katniss of the uprisings in Panem caused by her and Peeta's defiance in the arena. The next Hunger Games following the 74th Games is a special kind of games called the Quarter Quell, which happens every 25 years in the history of the Hunger Games. The Quarter Quell adds a special little twist to the Hunger Games that make them more dangerous than ever. But the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes takes place during the 10th Hunger Games, so that means no Quarter Quell for Lucy Gray Baird. For the first Quarter Quell, which was the 25th Hunger Games, 15 years after the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, as a reminder to the rebels that their children were dying because of their choice to initiate violence, every district was made to hold an election and vote on the tributes who would represent it. So that means the districts had to choose their own tributes instead of their names being pulled out of a bowl at random. Apparently it was the rebels who were responsible for the Hunger Games, even though they were created by Dean Casca Highbottom, who'll be played by Peter Dinklage in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. The first Quarter Quell gave the districts a chance to either get rid of their unwanted, or to up their chances of winning the Hunger Games. For the second Quarter Quell, which was the 50th Hunger Games, as a reminder that 2 rebels died for each capital citizen, every district was required to send twice as many tributes. So that means that each district had to reap 2 boys and 2 girls, meaning 48 total tributes. This is the Hunger Games in which Haymitch was the victor. This was explored in the book and not the movie, which was a huge missed opportunity. It would have explored why Haymitch resolved to drinking his trauma away, but in the movie, they don't even mention it. And for the third Quarter Quell, the 75th Hunger Games, in which Catching Fire revolves around, as a reminder to the rebels that even the strongest among them cannot overcome the power of the capital, the male and female tributes will be reaped from their existing pool of victors. So that means Katniss has no choice but to return to the Hunger Games arena, since she's the only surviving girl tribute from District 12, as Lucy Gray Baird supposedly died between the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and the 74th Hunger Games. That also means that this is the first and only Hunger Games to involve tributes who are much older than 18. This was to destroy bonds with the districts and to make them feel weak. According to a deleted scene, there was supposed to be a different theme for the third Quarter Quell, but since Katniss was the only surviving girl tribute from District 12, not counting Lucy Gray, this was ultimately changed by Snow in an attempt to stop the rising rebellion in the districts. Eventually, in Mockingjay, the rebellion comes to reality and the capital is fucked beyond compare. Just like the first movie, Catching Fire is mostly faithful to the book it was based on that was written by Suzanne Collins, with minor differences here and there. For example, in the book, we actually see Haymitch's time as the Hunger Games tribute, but in the movie, they don't show that. And unlike the first movie, which was directed by Gary Ross, this movie, as well as the rest of the Hunger Games movies, including the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, was directed by Francis Lawrence. At the start of the story, Katniss developed serious PTSD as a result of her time in the Hunger Games arena. I guess the same can be said to anyone who became victors of past Hunger Games, because they witnessed so many children and teens getting slaughtered by either their own hands or watching other tributes massacre them. In this case, she is traumatized by killing Huey from the boys, in which she did Homelander's job for him. Well, Jack Quaid's character is named Marvel in the Hunger Games, but since The Boys is my favorite show on Prime Video, and I still need to catch up on Gen V, I'm just gonna call him Huey. Meanwhile, Katniss and Peeta have relocated to the Victor's Village, which is where victors of past Hunger Games reside. The concept of the Victor's Village was created by Coriolanus Snow after the events of the 10th Hunger Games and the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, as the first 10 Hunger Games didn't involve that. Katniss and Peeta then go on a victory tour of Panem, starting with District 11 and ending in District 1. But before that, Katniss is visited by President Snow, who warns her that her and Peeta's actions have sparked an uprising in the districts, and that she has to convince all of Panem that her actions are merely out of love for Peeta, and not to spark rebellion. Otherwise, he'll have her loved ones executed, including her old friend Gale. That goes to show how much of a heartless dick he is, just like a certain president we've had in real life who I'm not gonna mention, or share a photo of. Plus, Snow's actions in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes are just him starting to become the biggest dick in all of Panem.
That was just a prelude, an hors d'oeuvre, an aperitif, an amuse-bouche.
Ever since the previous games ended, Katniss has been very emotionally distant from Peeta. The first stop of the victory tour is in District 11, where Katniss pays respect to Rue and Thresh. The rest spared her life after she helped Rue, and Rue even reminded Katniss of her sister Prim. Their speeches spark a deadly response from the Capitol when an old man from District 11 is executed for whistling the 4-note tune that everybody knows and loves. And instead of showing graphic imagery of the execution of the old man, I'll show you a more family-friendly way of how the Capitol treats people who whistle in public.
I'll put an end to all music on Mobius. No humming, no singing, and no radio. And no whistling!
So yes, apparently when you whistle the 4-note tune in Panem, your ass is handed to you on a silver platter. But anyone in Dimension 76 can get away with whistling, because anyone who has ever known me knows that I'm a show-off when it comes to whistling. So after the tragedy that occurs in District 11, Katniss and Peeta have to watch what they say in their speeches to the other districts. Katniss and Peeta then announce their engagement in order to please the Capitol, but President Snow remains unconvinced, and Katniss then comes face to face with the next head game maker after the previous game maker, Seneca Crane, is forced to eat nightlock berries. This is Plutarch Heavensbee, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman. Like I said in my review for the first Hunger Games movie, Philip Seymour Hoffman didn't live long enough to see both parts of Mockingjay, as he passed away on February 2nd, 2014 from an acute mixed drug intoxication. Once they return to District 12, Katniss witnesses the horrors of the Peacekeepers' brutal actions as they suppress the population, and she warns Gale of Snow's threat to have him and the Everdeen family killed. Eventually, Gale is brought out to the center of District 12 and is whipped by Peacekeepers after stopping them from killing civilians. Eventually, Katniss, Peeta, and Haymitch step in and intervene, as Snow later decrees that Hunger Games victors pose a threat to the Capitol, and thus, the third quarter quell is announced, and Katniss is forced back into the arena, much to her horror. As the only female victor from District 12, Katniss will be back in the games no matter what, and she quickly realizes that getting her back in the arena is the whole point of this rule. At this point in the story, the stakes are much higher, and it's more intense than the first Hunger Games. As much as I love the first Hunger Games, Catching Fire is where they really up the ante. And since Lucy Gray Baird is dead at this point, Katniss is the only girl tribute from District 12 still living, and Peeta and Haymitch are the only male tributes. Haymitch's name is drawn, but Peeta volunteers to take his place. And once they make it to the Capitol, they meet past Hunger Games victors, including Finnick Odair, played by Sam Claflin. Finnick is from District 4, and he was a victor of the 65th Hunger Games. He is 24 years old in Catching Fire, and he becomes an ally to Katniss and Peeta. Katniss even befriends the two tributes from District 3, Beetee, played by Jeffrey Wright, and Wyrus, played by Amanda Plummer, who is actually the daughter of Christopher Plummer, best known for playing Captain Von Trapp in The Sound of Music back in 1965. Sadly, Christopher Plummer passed away on February 5, 2021 at age 91. Another ally to Katniss and Peeta is Johanna Mason from District 7, played by Jenna Malone. She won the 71st Hunger Games, 3 years before Katniss and Peeta's Hunger Games. And then we have Mags, from District 4, who is actually Finnick's mentor. Mags is played by Lynn Cohen. After training for the Quarter Quell, Katniss's primary objective is to make allies in the arena, which she does with the tributes from Districts 3 and 4. And during her interview with Caesar Flickerman, she wears a wedding dress as ordered by President Snow. When she twirls around, we see that it was modified by Cinna to make it look like an actual Mockingjay, after the pin she wore in the previous games. And when it's Peeta's turn, he makes up a bullshit lie that he and Katniss are expecting a baby. It seems that every tribute in the 75th games is against this whole idea, and how they're basically saying fuck you to the Capitol. And before Katniss is shipped off into the arena, she's reminded by Haymitch to remember who the real enemy is. And as she enters the Mari Brothers warp pipe to enter the arena, she witnesses Cinna being beaten to death by Peacekeepers. All because he altered the dress that she wore during her interview. But Cinna actually dies off screen in Mockingjay Part 1. This arena is a whole lot different this time around. It all takes place on a beach, in an arena shaped like a clock, and that every hour, in each section of the clock, a booby trap is triggered. For example, at 12 o'clock, lightning hits a tree. There's also blood rain, poisonous fog, a tidal wave, creatures that look like Rafiki from The Lion King who are deadly, and a section filled with jabberjays. Jabberjays are a special type of bird that mimics voices and picks up conversations, and play them out. But in this arena, the jabberjays sound like the screams of their tributes' loved ones, for the sole purpose of psychological torture. Of course, Shonik would be crying and having a panic attack if he hears Aurora's screams of terror as he believes she's being tortured. Same with Sonic when he hears Amy's tortured screams. Also, this arena is one huge dome surrounded by a force field that puts you under cardiac arrest when you run into it. Basically, the electric fence from Jurassic Park. I don't know if they borrowed this from Jurassic Park, but I just wanted to point it out. While exploring the arena looking for food and water, Peter runs into a force field and his heart stops. Meanwhile, Mag sacrifices herself in the poisonous fog so that Finnick can help Peeta out. They are then attacked by mandrills. Katniss and Peeta then form an alliance with Beetee, Wyrus, Johanna, and Finnick, and it is then that they discover that the entire arena is shaped like a clock, and that every hour, each sector of the clock triggers a booby trap. They come up with a plan to lure the careers from Districts 1 and 2 into a trap by bringing them to a beach and electrocuting them in the lightning tree section. And during this segment, Katniss and Peeta share a romantic moment where they vow to protect each other, and that everyone in District 12 needs Peeta alive, even Katniss, showing that their love is real, and not just for show. While setting up the trap, the group are attacked by the careers, and Johanna cuts the tracker out of Katniss's arm, and she supposedly thinks she betrayed her and Peeta, same with Finnick. As a cannon goes off signaling the death of a tribute, Finnick reminds Katniss to remember who the real enemy is. Katniss then attaches the wire to an arrow and fires it at the force field, destroying the arena. Katniss is then ejected from the arena by a hovercraft, where Plutarch Heavensbee reveals himself to be a rebel working against Snow, and having the tributes agreed on a plan to get them out of the arena, thus sabotaging the games. They are en route to District 13, but he tells her that Peeta and Johanna have been abducted by the Capitol. Enraged at Haymitch for not keeping his promise, she is sedated and she wakes up with Gale by her side, saying that her family is safe, but District 12 has been destroyed by the Capitol. I'm giving Catching Fire a 10 out of 10. Out of the 4 Hunger Games films we've gotten prior to the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, Catching Fire is my personal favorite. It is at this point in the story where they up the ante and the intensity levels, showing that there's bigger trouble brewing outside of the Hunger Games arena. The cast is excellent, from the returning actors from the first Hunger Games movie, to the new stars like Philip Seymour Hoffman, Sam Claflin, and many more. Catching Fire is my favorite of the Hunger Games books, way before I finished reading the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And when I saw this movie for the very first time, it was like my favorite Hunger Games book came to life before my very eyes. And let me just say right off the bat, watching the Hunger Games movies again was an absolute pleasure, because I loved the books and movies when I was in my late teens, and I still love them to this day. I first got into the books when I was 16, and I'm 28 now. And when it was announced that there would be a new prequel book set in the same continuity as the Hunger Games, which turned out to be the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I immediately wanted to start reading it. And when I started it, I could not put that book down. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes was one of my most anticipated films of 2023, and from what I've been hearing, it's going to be one epic time at the theater. Stay tuned for my upcoming review of Mockingjay Part 1 coming soon, as well as all other projects and reviews coming soon. Until then, I'll see you all next time.